So my name is Kim Ware, and I have the pleasure of visiting with you this morning. Another instructor in the comm department is also here. Her name is Valerie, and we're going to be working together as we continue to do these interviewing courses for people so that you have a really good feel for not only what you're doing at Bryan, but what you might start looking towards in the outside as you're interviewing for jobs in your field. So what I'd like to do first is share with you a video of perhaps what not to do. So I'm going to change my sharing screen to this one. And this is called, oops. This is the one I want. There it is. Okay. Can you see that? Yes? Okay, good. So here we go. Let's watch it.
John?
Sorry, I'm late. Are you Susan? I'm here for the job interview.
Hi, I'm Susan Thompson, Resource Manager. You're 10 minutes late.
The traffic was terrible.
Have a seat. Are you John Hill?
Yeah,
Okay, tell me about yourself.
my main hobbies are watching classical movies, riding my motorcycle, and I have two granddaughters. They're so cute. Let me show you.
Oh, that's okay. I'll take your word for it. Do you have a resume?
I turned it in with my application.
Okay. All right, it says here.
Look, I found them. Aren't they adorable? And wait, there's my dog. Isn't that cute?
Very cute. It says here that you only had your last job for a couple of months. Can you tell me why it was so short?
You know, I hated that place. My supervisor was such a jerk. All he did was complain about my work.
Oh, what was the problem?
Oh, they had all these rules. I followed the most important ones the best I could, but he would get mad if I didn't follow all the rules all the time. Ugh.
I see. Well, can you tell me why you want to work here?
Oh yeah, somebody told me you guys have a really good dental policy. I've got trouble with this tooth right here. It needs a lot of work.
Okay, I think I've heard enough. Do you have any questions for me?
You know, what does this place do?
Well, we have a restaurant and we make frozen desserts that are shipped all across the country.
Oh, cool.
Well, it's been nice meeting you.
Well, now when will I know if I get the job?
We'll make phone calls tomorrow.
Okay, see you later.
See ya.
Opening thoughts? What do you think about that?
Wow.
Just a couple.
That's obviously a very bad interview.
Yeah, not really on point. Something I never noticed before is that he's chewing gum. Did you notice him chomping on his gum when he first came in? And then she asked him to say something about himself, and he launched into his hobbies. That's not exactly what we're going for. So let's go through why this interview didn't quite work out, along with the top 5 tips for interviewing, and see if we can do better than this dude. So the first thing that we notice is selecting the employer. So this is the lady, the work setting that he's going to be going into. So we can see how she's dressed. We have a feel for sort of the area. So as you're selecting the employer, this is as much about you finding the right fit as it is about them finding the right fit. So before you even apply, what you want to do is research yourself. What are your strengths? What are you looking for in an employer? What kind of commute do you want? Do you want them to be close to the office? Do you want to be far away? Do you want to have a commute? Do you have a choice? Then you need to research the position. Am I a good fit for this position? Do I have what they're looking for? Is it going to be an opportunity for growth for both myself and the employer? So this poor guy, he went in, did he have any idea what the position was? No, I don't even know that he knew what he could do aside from getting his tooth fixed. Right? And then before you go in, so you not only want to understand the position that you're applying for, you want to understand exactly who the employer is. Take a look at their history. Nowadays, we have, of course, all these websites, so we can look at their about page and get a feel for who they are. If you know anyone who works there, you could call and say, hey, tell me about your employer. What do they like? What do they not like? What's the culture of the company? So that before you go in, before you even apply, you have a really good feeling for who the employer is and what you can offer and what they can offer you. So the rest of this event is going to cover looking at, assuming you've already applied, assuming you've already gotten the interview. Okay? Any questions about selecting the employer? Okay, good.
Okay.
So there are a couple of types of different interviews. Did you know this before you got started in this talk? Did you know there are different kinds of interviews? I'm going to take that as a no. No, yes?
I did not know that.
No.
So that's pretty interesting.
I think so. So overall, we're looking at employment interviews, but there are 3 different types of interviews that you could be walking into. And sometimes there's multiple rounds of interviews where they do a screening process. Usually that is done by the HR department or by a recruiter. And then if you make it through screening, you get to move on to the next round of interviews, depending on the depth of the organization. So we've got 3 different kinds that I want to share with you today. We have a behavioral interview, a technical interview, and a social interview. A behavioral interview is more like they're going to be looking at you to see how you behave in a particular situation. So like in this particular interview, he walked into an office and she's looking at to see his professionalism. Can he handle himself during the interview? Does he have the behaviors you need? Some of you are going to be paralegals. So as you go in, do you have the kind of tact? Do you have the skill set to behave yourself to fit into the setting? I was talking to a girl this morning and she said she went to go interview as an administrative assistant at a college, and she made the mistake of walking in dressed like a college student. She looked very pretty. She said she had on a pink sweater, she had her hair curled, she had her makeup on, and she was ready to go nail the interview. Well, she didn't get the interview because she looked too much like the students who were going to be coming into the office. And when she did go in to see the woman that they'd hired, it was a secretary who was dressed very formally, did not necessarily have her hair curled, which is nothing wrong with that, but can you fit into the environment? Do you have the skill set and the behaviors to make it work? The technical interviews where you'll actually be tested on some sort of technique. So for people who are going in, well, probably any of the fields you're going into, but I'm thinking like health information systems, you may be tested on your ability to code and to work within different software programs. If you are in the fitness program, maybe they're going to actually have you do a workout to lead a group workout and just see how you go. If you're going into web development, perhaps you'll do some type of coding or some kind of test with programming. A social interview is just a little more relaxed than a behavioral interview or a technical interview. In a social interview, you would see that happen if you were invited out to lunch, if you were invited out to coffee. Has anyone ever had an interview over food? So this is probably going to happen in your second or third interview. You've made it through screening. You've made it through the initial interview. Now we want to see what your manners are like and if you're a good personality fit for the rest of our team. So we might invite you out to have coffee with us, see if you get along with everybody, maybe over lunch, maybe over drinks. So these are the types of interviews that you can expect to see as you exit Bryan University to go out into your field. Any questions about any of those? Which one sounds the most appealing to you?
I mean, behavioral interview sounds more appealing for me.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think I'm like, for me, that would just be easier for me personally, just because, like, you know, I'm not difficult to get along with, and I've never heard that about myself. So, and I'm usually good at making conversation and things like that. So it'd probably be a little easier to get through that phase.
Yeah, I think I can agree with you there, because here you're sort of putting on your best face, sort of. So there's an element of performance to it. So you're dressing the part and you're prepared with the next few things that I'm going to talk to you about. Anybody else see another interview type as being easier to you?
I think the social interview would probably be the easiest of the three, but like you said, it's usually the last part of it. And I've never had that. I've only, I think I've only ever had like technical interviews for everything I've applied for.
Okay. Okay.
And
Yeah.
technical interview seems the hardest.
Right. Because you actually have to perform your skill set.
I believe you'll have to be kind of careful with the social interview.
Oh, good point. Why is that?
You don't really want to kind of like overdo your social with your new potential coworkers.
Right. That's right. And you don't want to share too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's where interpersonal communication and speaking and presenting is really important, because you're learning about different listening styles and you're learning how to ask good open-ended questions so that you can balance all these things that are going on. Because we talk about the communication model there, you're sending and receiving, you're trying to make sure you're receiving things correctly, you're trying to make sure you're sending messages correctly, and it's just a lot. And remember that no interview is a bad interview. It could feel bad, but every interview is a great chance to practice speaking with other people and promoting yourself and learning more about others. Thanks for indulging me in that conversation. So let's talk about before you get to go sit in front of this lady right here. How are we going to prepare for the interview? We've done all the application, we've done the screening, and now we get to go to the interview. The very best thing that you can do, aside from everything we've talked about ahead of time, is to be prepared with show and tell. What does that mean? Well, especially coming out of college, it's likely you haven't had a ton of work experience, or maybe you have, but go ahead and be pre-thinking about some stories that you can tell about yourself to showcase why you're a good fit for this employer. So for instance, they might ask you, what is your favorite class that you've taken in your field? So be thinking about, what did I really like? Why did I really like it? And how can I show that this class was good for me, that I grew in this class, and that it makes me a good fit for this employer? If you're in an interview and they ask you, tell me about a difficult time that you've had working with other people. Think about that too. So how can you share stories where you are an overcomer, things have gone well for you, and it makes you a good fit for the employer, and vice versa? Now, more on preparation. This poor guy, he did not dress the part at all. So part of researching your employer is researching their company culture and figuring out what they wear in the office. So you want to come dressed in an attire that shows off at first that you are a very good fit for them. So let's go back and take a look at this lady. How is she dressed? Business casual, could we say?
Yeah, I'd say casual office, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so
Yeah, casual.
yeah, she's wearing a skirt. She's not wearing jeans. She has on jewelry. She has on contrasting plain colors. So she looks to me like a business professional, probably not the way an attorney would dress to go into court, but definitely the way someone would dress to go into this office. Now, this dude, I call him a dude because he looks like a dude to me. How's he dressed?
Especially with the leather jacket, very relaxed.
Yeah,
T-shirt and jeans.
yeah. I think if I remember correctly, he talked about motorcycles. So maybe he just
He
does.
looks like he pulled up on a motorcycle. Yeah.
He definitely does. So he's not quite ready. So if you were going to change the way that he dressed, what would we do for him?
First change the
Everything.
undershirt and the pants. The jacket's not so horrible. It's a jacket, you have to bundle up, but the undershirt and the pants, not acceptable attire.
No, not at all. So I think, Charlie, what did you say?
Well, I said everything. You know, I'd put at least a pair of chinos on and a button shirt, some type of collared shirt. And like, I can't see who was talking, but the other lady said, I mean, the jacket's okay, but I would have still taken it off before I came in.
Correct. Take it off for sure.
Yeah, he should have had a suit coat or something in his side pack in his motorcycle that he could change into. So definitely want to dress the part. We don't want to overdress. So thinking about this guy and what the lady was wearing, do you think he'd be overdressed if he had on a tie?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. I mean, some people like the initiative of not like a suit tie, but maybe that's a little overdressed for this position, but coming in like maybe a step up from what the position would require. Just showing that you're respecting what you're going in for.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of dress to impress, and you're putting your best self forward. So he probably shouldn't show up in a tux or, $400. Well, I don't even know how much suits cost right now. Let's say $1,200, a $1,200 suit. Probably not, but definitely better than what he's wearing now. When we are preparing, let's talk about timing. He was 10 minutes late. So the idea is you want to be within the vicinity of the office building or where the interview is being held within 30 minutes. So just make sure you're within the vicinity so that you're not rushing. And then within 10 to 15 minutes of the actual start time of the interview, you need to be walking in to greet the secretary or whoever is the frontline worker for the office. And if you're going straight in, say it's a small office and you're going to just go in and meet straight with the attorney or the office manager, still get there early. It is better to be early than to be late or even right on time. If you get there 10 to 15 minutes early, you have an opportunity to breathe for just a minute, which is what I believe we're going to be talking about next. Oh,
In the theater, on time is late in the theater. So
Right. And if you're a homeschooler like me, late is totally fine because you have 1,000 children that you're bringing with you to whatever event you're going to. So, okay, enough about me. Let's move on. So let's talk about virtual interviews. This 5 years ago was not really a thing. And now we're in overdrive with our world pandemic situation. So let's talk about virtual interviews. If you get the pleasure of doing one of these, like a telephone interview is probably going to happen in a pre-screening versus just a straight up behavioral, technical, social interview. That's probably going to be video or digital. In either event, let's make sure that the place around you is quiet. If you are in your home, you really need to go to a closed space and put your animals away. Put your children away so that you cannot be interrupted because you want to be able to hear and they want to be able to hear you. You need to increase your volume. When people get nervous, they tend to talk quieter naturally. It just kind of happens. So think about making sure that you are enunciating your words, that you are speaking clearly, and that the area around you is quiet. Same thing with video and digital, but a step further, they can see you. So pajama pants on the bottom, sure. Make sure that you are dressing the part on the top. And also a word about your background. If your background is like open to the rest of your house, you don't have a wall, even this behind me is a little bit messy. So you would probably want to make sure that you're using a filter, or that you can turn your monitor so that things are a little less messy. So they're focusing on you and they're not focusing on the other things around you. The next thing is to consider, look at the camera. So I keep looking to my right. It might be your left is what you're seeing, but that's where you all are. That's where I can see your faces, but then you're looking at me from the side. So try to make sure you're looking at your camera and you're talking. If it is cumbersome for you to be looking at yourself, you can just take the screen down and not look at yourself. But then you can't read the nonverbals of everybody else. So try when you're speaking, speak straight to the camera. I could even maybe like move this. I could try center if I'm not looking at another screen, like a PowerPoint presentation. And then does it look now like I'm looking at you a little bit better? Yeah, I mean, if I move you
Yeah.
up, if I move you up here, you're right underneath my camera, so I can see you and I look like I'm looking at you versus down to the right, left, and so on. Do you have any questions about telephone or video, digital interviews? Oh, one more thing, make sure you have all your other content put away. So like don't have some YouTube comedy hour going in the background. Just get rid of it all, one screen open. First impressions. How many of you size people up within the first 7 seconds?
Pretty much.
You might think that you don't, but you totally do. In the first 7 seconds, you are looking at your employer and you're developing an impression, and they're looking at you and they're developing an impression of you. So there are 4 primary areas that we want to talk about. The first is the handshake. Now, this is something I'm a little unsure about because I'm not sure where we are in our pandemic moment. Typically, you would extend your hand and you would give a nice firm handshake. Nothing too hard and nothing too soft, just firm enough. Practice it with people around you and they can let you know if it's not quite right. But what do you think in the moment that we're in right now? Do you think handshakes are acceptable?
Not unless you have a bottle of hand sanitizer with you
Yep.
and some long arms.
It really depends, like, because where I'm at, it's like, it's 50-50 really. I can kind of gauge it right now as far as like when I meet new people. Usually the older guys are still handshaking. And anybody else, like it's you kind of just have to go with it. I kind of put a fist bump out there, and then if their hand opens, then I open mine.
Yeah,
Fist bump is definitely a popular choice right now.
it really
Yeah, I
is.
work at the hospital, so we do elbows.
Elbows, good.
Elbows, yep.
That's cool. So I do think it depends on the employment culture that you're walking into. And that is, again, part of making sure that you're doing your research. I tend to think that if your future employer extends their hand to yours, you ought to shake their hand, because that is the first moment of saying, I'm here, I'm ready to work with you. If that should happen, don't touch your face afterwards. Just go wash your hands after the interview, which you shouldn't be touching your face or fiddling with your hair or anything like that during the interview either. So that's the handshake, eye contact. So we want to keep eye contact with our future employer, not staring at them, like I'm here, hire me now. No, don't do that. But just keep standard eye contact. The number one thing that we want to do is look down, because we don't want to make eye contact with this person who is judging us. But remember, you're judging them just as much as they're judging you. You're trying to see if you're a good fit. So keep appropriate eye contact based on the culture that you're in. Another good reason why you are taking a communication class, because everything I'm talking about, you're getting to go in depth with these things in your course. And it's just really good for you to go in from a position of communication consciousness and feel comfortable with what you're doing because you've had the practice in this course. Smile. A smile breaks the ice every time. Continue to be upbeat, happy, positive during the entire interview. even if you go into the interview and you realize, I don't want this job, you need to keep smiling and be happy and optimistic the entire time, because you don't know how your paths will cross again. You don't know how this other employer is networking with other employers or other recruiters. And you want your name to be associated with, oh, that person is really likable. I think they're going to be a great part of our team. And I'm pretty sure they can get along with everyone. So you be happy, fake it till you make it. Can you do that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we can. Okay, so now a final word on poise. How do we stay poised in the interview and not like shift our feet constantly or tap the table or cross our arms or play with our hair? How do you do that? And I think the best way to do that is to breathe. Measure your words. You don't have to speak super fast. You don't have to speak super slow, but you can have an even tempo. A great way to give yourself time to think is to not only be prepared with your show and tells, but always, you've been hearing this since you were in high school probably, always restate the question you're being asked and follow it up with because or since. That will give you time to think about what you want to say and keep breathing. Before you go into the interview, it's likely you're going to have a ton of nerves. So that's just energy that your body needs to work out. In another class that I teach, which is a crash course on public speaking, I tell people to go to the bathroom or go to their car. That is your safe space. So before you walk in, because remember, you're already in the vicinity 30 minutes ahead of time, before you walk in, take a few minutes in your car just to breathe in and breathe out. If you're worried about getting tongue-tied, you can blow air through your lips or your tongue. Now, don't laugh. Well, you can laugh, it's fine, but right? And no one can see you doing that. You can blow sounds through your tongue. You can do some tongue twisters, just loosening that all up, some shoulder rolls. So where are you going to go? You can go to the car or you can go to the bathroom. Those are safe spaces where no one can see you. Start to ease your body up so that you can be poised and ready to go when you get in there. So what are your thoughts on, I am like a fire hose with this stuff. Do you have any thoughts on any of these that you want to talk about and further?
No, Kim, one of the things that I do use when I interview, I go with the attitude that this job is mine and I perform there like I got this is mine. So it makes it really easy for me. And hasn't been not even one time that I don't get the position because I normally go with that attitude. And I think that having that attitude will help everybody to obtain a job easily.
I agree with you. Thanks for sharing that. And just having the confidence that you've gone to school, you've done, I believe here you have an externship or something. So you are prepared. Now, because you are coming fresh out of school, there may be some things that you don't know how to do. And it's okay to say, I haven't really done that much, but I'm really enthusiastic to learn. I'm ready to grow and figure out how to do what you want, which is what you're going to have to do in any employment culture anyway. Nellie, would you say that as you've gone in and you've gotten that job, you've still had to learn exactly how things function in that office?
Definitely. Every job is different, regardless if you know what you're doing and you've done this in the past. Every office is different and they have their own method. So it's a learning process, every job that you obtain.
That's right. Thanks for sharing that. So that's why it's important to maintain the upbeat, the optimistic attitude. Just be positive. So during the interviews, we've talked about, we keep smiling, we be positive, listening, rephrasing the questions that are asked of you. This guy is smiling, but not for the right reason, right? This is where he's found the pictures of his grandkids. That's a no-no. You can maybe do that like 4 weeks into actual employment when you're sitting at lunch and you're starting to do some more moderate self-disclosure. So I'm back. Okay, so again, we're talking about responding to the questions. Always use the because. I am confident that I'd be a great fit for this office because. I'm really glad you asked that question. I actually got to do that in XYZ because I was. Be prepared with questions to ask them, like maybe about the position, things that show that you really want to know more. And then finally, you want to establish next steps. So thank you so much for having me. What happens next? When should I expect to hear from you? So always have a closing statement where you are establishing the next step in the hiring process. Any questions about that? That can be a little clunky, but a lot of it depends on the interview. Yeah. So let's tease through that a little bit more. You're in a behavioral interview. They're looking to see if you're a good fit for the office, if you have the mannerisms and the skill sets. What do you think we would say to establish the next step in that kind of interview? Maybe something like, thank you for having me today. Because it's behavioral. So thank you so much for having me. I really look forward to hearing from you next week. When can I expect to hear from you about your decision? That would work. Technical interview. You've taken a test. What would you do after that?
Maybe ask us like if, because I've done some technical interviews where for training positions where I've trained another trainer basically in a short whatever, and it's usually it's not the person interviewing me. So I like you could ask the person that you're training in that aspect. It's just like, so what did you get from that? Like what did you think before I go back to my interview? Like what might I need to do differently if I started working here versus what I'm doing with you from what I already know.
Oh, that's great. Very good. And that is a great thing to do because it shows interest in the actual the technicalities of the field that you're doing and the nuances of how they do things. That's good. Now the social interview. You've met with a couple of the team members. You've had lunch. What could that look like?
That's something I wouldn't even know what to start.
So let's say, yeah, so maybe it's like, it's been great to work with you. I'm really excited to meet the rest of the team. When could I expect to do that? Right? So that would be a good way to move through the social interview. So now wrapping up here, post-interview, you must send a thank you within 24 to 48 hours. You can send it through email. Do not send it through text unless that's been your primary form of communication with the employer. I doubt it would be. So send an email immediately, 24 to 48 hours, but immediately to say thank you for the interview. I enjoyed it. I am enthusiastic to work with you, and I'm confident that I'd be a good fit, or that we would be a good fit for each other. If you are able to, sending a paper thank you would help. When I was interviewing at graduate schools, I sent thank you notes to each of the professors that worked with me, and I am 100% confident that that is what allowed me to get into graduate school. Was sending a thank you letter that was personal, and the reiteration is important. So has anyone sent a thank you letter before? Any questions about that?
Yeah, I've actually sent thank you letters after the interviews.
Same.
Like over email.
Awesome. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. In your thank you letter, would it be appropriate to say, hey, thanks for having me interview today? With your opening?
Maybe in a few more words than that.
Yeah, you should probably say hello, so-and-so, or dear so-and-so. Hey is pretty informal. So we want to maintain a level of professionalism and formality. And you can start practicing that with your instructors now. There are some instructors that like are keeping like this rapport with you by saying, hey there, hi, what's up? But you could start to practice using that professionalism now by instead of responding with, hey there, or hey, exclamation point. Hi, Dr. Davis. Hi, Kim, dear Kim, and really start pushing that ball forward, because the other thing is it's going to start with you. We have like this weird moment where we have more generations working at the same time than we've had ever before in the history of the United States. So we've got people who should be retiring but aren't retiring, are baby boomers. Then we have people who are middle age in their 40s who are just still trying to work so that they can build up retirement. Then we have millennials, and then we have people who are coming up under them. So we have like this broad scope of people who are not digital natives, people who had technology and didn't have technology, and then people who are coming in who've always and ever been using technology. So it's really up to us to continue to help shape the next generation of leaders as we are getting these jobs. So work on that. So that pretty much concludes the top 5 tips for interviewing. I feel like I've given you a lot of information. Do you have any questions about anything?
No, I couldn't think of any.
Okay, good. Well, I know Valerie is here too. She might be your instructor, or if I'm your instructor, feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have about interviewing. Also, you're each in very specific departments. So go back to your program director and say, hey, I just learned this. Are there any changes that are industry specific to what I'm doing that I need to know about when I go interview? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll look forward to seeing you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.